A massive alien vessel materialized just beyond lunar orbit, its sleek hull gleaming with an otherworldly shine that made Earth's orbital platforms look like ancient relics. The year was 2157, and humanity was about to meet its first visitors from another star. Admiral Sun stood on the bridge of the EDS Indomitable, Earth's flagship that suddenly felt small and weak. His hands gripped the command rail tightly as the huge alien ship dwarfed everything humans had built in space. Lieutenant Bod worked frantically at her console, trying to establish contact. "Sir, they're responding to our signals," she said, surprise evident in her voice. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature unlike anything seen on Earth. The alien had a pointed face with dark eyes and skin that shimmered with a metallic blue-green hue. 4 arms were visible, ending in hands with 6 long fingers each. "I am High Commander Tai of the Valkyrian Dominion," the alien announced, its jaw structures clicking in what seemed like amusement. "Your vessels are quaint. We expected more from the species that has been broadcasting into space for centuries." Admiral Sun straightened his back. "I am Admiral Sun of the Earth Defense Fleet. We welcome you to our solar system and hope for peaceful relations between our peoples." The alien commander made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Peace is always an option. Submission is the path to it." Within hours, ships from every nation converged near Earth's orbit. The Valkyrian vessel remained in position, occasionally sending out smaller craft that circled Earth with scanning beams that penetrated even the most secure military installations. 3 days later, a diplomatic meeting was arranged on the neutral ground of the International Lunar Base. Admiral Sun led a team of Earth's top officials to meet the aliens face to face. The Valkyrian delegation glided into the meeting chamber with an air of superiority. High Commander Ta wore an outfit that seemed to shift colors with his movements. Behind him, 6 other Valkyrians carried devices that hummed with unknown energy. "Your civilization has potential," Ta began without any greeting. "But you are centuries behind us. This can be a blessing or a curse for your people." Dr. Min, Earth's chief scientist, attempted to establish common ground. "We hope to learn from your advanced civilization. Perhaps we can offer cultural exchange." Tai cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Culture is irrelevant when technology is this disparate. Let me demonstrate our concerns." He touched a small device on his wrist, and a holographic display filled the center of the room, showing Earth's military bases and orbital defenses in perfect detail. "Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. Your defenses are inadequate," Ta stated flatly. "We have traveled across 12 systems. In each, we have established protectorates. Some resisted, none succeeded." Admiral Sun felt his stomach tighten. "We have no hostile intentions toward your people. Intentions are irrelevant. Resources are what matter," replied Ta. "Your planet is rich in elements we require. Your position in this sector is strategically valuable." The next day, the Valkyrians requested a tour of Earth's primary defense systems. Against his better judgment, Admiral Sun was ordered to comply by a nervous United Nations Security Council. At the Pacific Ocean Naval Base, High Commander Tai ran his 6-fingered hand along the barrel of Earth's most powerful railgun, a weapon capable of launching projectiles at 8 times the speed of sound. "These projectile weapons," said Ta with obvious scorn. "Do your people still throw rocks at each other as well?" Admiral Sun kept his face neutral despite the insult. "They serve our defensive needs." "Against other humans, perhaps," Tai replied. "Our shift shields would barely register such impacts." When they reached the nuclear missile silos in the northern continent, Taz and Turage actually laughed openly. "Atomic fission. We advanced beyond such crude power sources 5,000 years ago," one of the Valkyrian officers remarked. "The radiation alone would kill your own people." Admiral Sun watched carefully as the aliens examined Earth's defenses. He noticed something interesting. They paid almost no attention to the kinetic weapons, but spent considerable time scanning the energy-based defense systems. As the tour concluded, High Commander Tai addressed the Earth officials directly. "We have seen enough. Your civilization is not yet ready for true galactic citizenship. However, we are willing to offer protection and guidance." The ultimatum came the following morning in a global broadcast that overrode all Earth communications. Tay's face appeared on screens worldwide. "People of Earth, the Valkyrian Dominion offers you peace through protection. Your resources will serve the greater needs of our civilization. In exchange, we will defend your world from the many dangers of space and gradually introduce you to appropriate technologies. Resistance would be unfortunate and ultimately futile. You have 48 hours to dismantle your military installations as a show of good faith." The United Nations convened an emergency session. For 6 straight hours, representatives from every nation argued about the proper response. Some advocated immediate surrender to save lives. Others insisted that humanity must fight, even against impossible odds. Admiral Sun was called to address the assembly. He stood before the world's leaders, his uniform crisp despite not having slept in days. "The Valkyrians possess technology far beyond our own," he began. "Their ships can travel between stars. Their weapons can likely destroy our cities from orbit. But I noticed something during their inspection of our defenses. They were dismissive of our projectile weapons, our railguns, our missiles, our conventional explosives. They focused entirely on our energy weapons and shields, which are indeed primitive compared to theirs." He paused, looking around the room. "I believe their defenses may be optimized against energy attacks but not physical ones. Their arrogance in showing us their scanning capabilities also reveal that they consider us no threat. This may be our only advantage." After hours more debate, a vote was taken. By a narrow margin, Earth chose to fight. The newly formed Earth Defense Coalition placed Admiral Sun in command of humanity's combined fleet, all 37 ships from various nations now united under a single banner. Engineers worked around the clock to implement his strategy, modifying weapon systems based on his observations of the Valkyrians' behavior. In his cabin aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Sun studied the faces of his senior officers on the screen. Captain Gill of the North Pacific Fleet, Colonel Du of the Orbital Defense Platform, and Wing Commander Yu of the Airspace Force all looked tired but determined. "They think our ships are obsolete," Sun told them. "They believe our weapons are toys. Let them think that. Pride comes before a fall." As the 48-hour deadline approached, Earth's fleet took up defensive positions. The ships were old by Valkyrian standards, nuclear-powered instead of using whatever exotic energy drove the alien vessels. Their weapons were primitive railguns and missiles rather than the plasma beams the aliens wielded. But Admiral Sun had a plan. If the Valkyrians believed Earth's technology to be harmless, they would attack with overconfidence. And overconfidence in battle was often fatal. As the deadline expired, the Valkyrian ship began to move closer to Earth. Several smaller vessels detached from the main craft, their shapes sleek and predatory against the blackness of space. Admiral Sun stood on his bridge, watching the approach. "All ships, maintain position. Wait for my command." The first battle for Earth's independence was about to begin, and humanity's outdated warships were ready to prove their worth. Admiral Sun gathered Earth's top military leaders in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. 50 meters underground, surrounded by thick concrete walls, they could speak freely without fear of Valkyrian scans. Large screens displayed images of the alien ships hovering above Earth. "They think our ships are museums," Admiral Sun told the assembled captains, pointing to the footage of High Commander Ta laughing at Earth's defenses. "Let's show them what history can teach." The room was silent. Many officers still believed fighting was hopeless. Earth's ships were indeed old compared to the alien vessels. Most had been built for fighting other humans, not advanced alien invaders. Lieutenant Jin, a young officer with bright eyes and a determined expression, raised her hand. "Sir, my great-grandfather commanded submarines in Earth's oceans during the last World War. He wrote in his journals about how the most advanced sonar couldn't detect his sub if he used the right tactics. Admiral Sun nodded for her to continue. The Valkyrian shields are calibrated for energy weapons, not physical impacts, Lieutenant Jin explained. I reviewed the scans they took of our bases. They spent almost no time examining our railguns or missile systems. Our primitive kinetic weapons might be our advantage. Captain Du frowned. But their ships move too fast. How would we even hit them? By making them come to us, replied Admiral Sun. By appearing weak and disorganized. The meeting lasted through the night. By morning, they had the beginnings of a plan. It wasn't much, but it gave them hope. Admiral Sun divided the fleet into 5 task forces, each with a specific role in the coming battle. For the next 2 weeks, Earth's ships underwent rapid modifications. In orbital shipyards and hidden bases on the far side of the moon, engineers worked around the clock. Railguns were enhanced to fire at higher velocities. Missile payloads were reconfigured to create wider damage patterns. Communication systems were hardened against Valkyrian scanning through simple but effective methods, sometimes as basic as returning to wired connections instead of wireless transmissions. Admiral Sun visited each facility, offering encouragement and listening to new ideas. At the Pacific Weapons Platform, a young engineer showed him how they had modified a standard torpedo to emit a magnetic pulse before impact. The Valkyrians use some kind of magnetic field to help control their plasma weapons, the engineer explained. This might disrupt that field for a few seconds. A few seconds could be enough. Admiral Sun replied. Make 100 more. On the 10th day of preparations, the Valkyrian ships began moving into a higher orbit. Their scanning beams intensified, probing Earth's defenses more aggressively. Admiral Sun requested permission to address the world. From the same underground bunker, his face was broadcast to screens across the planet. People of Earth, he began, his voice steady and calm. The Valkyrians believe we will surrender because their technology is more advanced. They judge us by their standards, but they've never faced human determination before. We may not have quantum technology, but we have something they lack. We've spent our history fighting and surviving against overwhelming odds. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Every nation, every tribe, every people on this planet knows what it means to face a stronger enemy and still find a way to survive. That knowledge is in our blood. It's in our history, and now it will be our strength. The speech raised morale among the troops, but in the halls of government, many still pushed for surrender. The Valkyrians had made their superiority clear. Fighting seemed like suicide. In a secret facility beneath Mount Hala, Dr. Ju led a team of nuclear engineers working without sleep. They weren't building new bombs. There wasn't time for that. Instead, they were modifying existing warheads to create specialized electromagnetic pulses. Admiral Sun visited on the 12th day, looking over the modified weapons with concern. Will they work? Dr. Ju, her face pale from lack of sleep, nodded. The more advanced their systems, she explained, pointing to diagrams of the alien ships, the more vulnerable they'll be to the right kind of pulse. Their quantum computers likely use superconducting materials. A strong enough EMP could shut them down completely. For how long? Asked Admiral Sun. Minutes, maybe. Possibly less. Dr. Ju admitted. But a few minutes might be all we need. On the base's testing range, they demonstrated the small version of the device. When activated, every electronic system within 50 meters instantly shut down. The lights went dark. Computers died. Even battery-powered devices stopped working. Impressive, said Admiral Sun as emergency lights slowly came back on. How many full-sized ones can you build in the next 3 days? 15, if we work nonstop, Dr. Ju replied. Make it 20, said Admiral Sun. I'll send more help. Back at fleet headquarters, Lieutenant Jin had been studying the Valkyrian ship movements. She noticed patterns in how they maintained their formation. They're very orderly, she explained to Admiral Sun, showing him the tracking data. They maintain perfect spacing at all times. If we could disrupt that formation, they might become confused. How would we do that? Asked Admiral Sun. With space mines, Jin replied. Simple devices that look like debris but contain explosives. Not to destroy their ships. We probably can't do that, but to force them to change course, to break their perfect pattern. Admiral Sun approved the plan immediately. Within hours, maintenance ships were adapted to deploy the space mines in key orbital paths. On the diplomatic front, the Earth Unified Government continued talks with the Valkyrians, pretending to consider surrender while buying time for preparations. High Commander Ta grew increasingly impatient, but agreed to extend his deadline by 5 more days. They think we're afraid, Admiral Sun told his officers. Let them think that. Fear can hide determination. Captain Jill had been working with ship captains to develop new maneuvers, ways of moving that would make Earth's vessels harder to target. They practiced in simulators, learning to work together in ways they never had before. The Valkyrians have never fought humans, Captain Gill told the fleet officers. They don't know our tricks, our deceptions, our willingness to take risks. We'll use that. By the end of the 2 weeks, Earth's obsolete fleet had been transformed. The ships looked the same from the outside, but inside, they were different. Stronger. Ready. Admiral Sun gathered his task force commanders for a final briefing. The room was tense but focused. We face an enemy with better ships, better weapons, and better shields, he said. But we have something they don't expect. The human ability to adapt. To use the enemy's strength against them. To turn disadvantage into advantage. He displayed the battle plan one final time. 5 phases, each dependent on the one before. If any phase failed, the entire plan would collapse. It was risky, but it was all they had. The Valkyrians believe this will be easy, Admiral Sun concluded. That's their first mistake. Their arrogance will be their downfall. As the meeting ended, Lieutenant Jin approached Admiral Sun privately. Sir, I've been working on something else. A way to use their communication systems against them. She showed him a small device, no bigger than a coin. We can't jam their signals. Their technology is too advanced. But we can flood their frequencies with noise. Not enough to block communications completely, but enough to cause delays. Small errors. Confusion. Admiral Sun smiled for the first time in days. How many of these can you make? Hundreds, Jin replied. We've already started production. On the final night before the Valkyrian deadline expired, Earth's fleet took up their positions. The ships were spread thin, appearing disorganized to alien scans. In reality, each was exactly where it needed to be for the plan to work. Admiral Sun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the Valkyrian ships begin to move into attack formation. Their sleek hulls gleamed in the sunlight, beautiful and deadly. All ships, maintain position, he ordered. Wait for my command. The fate of Earth would be decided in the next few hours. Humanity's first interstellar war was about to begin. And despite the odds, despite the Valkyrians' advanced technology, Admiral Sun felt something he hadn't expected: hope. The museum ships of Earth were ready to make history. 7 Valkyrian scout ships entered Earth's orbit, their teardrop shapes gleaming against the blackness of space. They moved with casual confidence, their perfect formation almost lazy as they approached. Their weapon systems remained powered down. They saw no need to activate them against such primitive opposition. Admiral Sun watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the alien vessels appeared on the main screen. His plan was about to be tested. Everything depended on these first moments. All ships, initiate protocol scattered retreat, he ordered calmly. Across Earth's orbital defense line, human vessels began moving away from the approaching aliens. To outside observers, it looked like panic, ships fleeing in different directions without coordination. On the Valkyrian command ship, Sub-Commander Da monitored the human response with amusement. The aliens' mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among their kind. Primitive vessels detected, Da reported to High Commander Ta. They appear to be retreating, High Commander. Ta's image appeared on the command screen, his metallic skin reflecting the lights of his bridge. As expected, he replied with obvious satisfaction. "Pursue and display our superiority. Let them witness true power before they surrender." Day relayed the orders to the scout ships. Separate and pursue. Capture one vessel if possible for study. The 7 Valkyrian ships broke their tight formation, each selecting a human vessel to chase. Their engines flared with blue-white energy as they accelerated, quickly closing the distance on Earth's slower ships. Lieutenant Jin monitored the tactical display aboard the Indomitable. "They've taken the bait, sir. All scouts have broken formation." Admiral Sun nodded. "Now we see if our modifications work. Signal Captain Mu to initiate Phase 2. The EDS Defiant, a small destroyer that had seen better days, continued its retreat as a Valkyrian scout closed rapidly from behind. Its captain, an experienced officer named Mu, watched the distance counter tick down. "Hold steady," she told her nervous crew. "Wait for the right moment." The Valkyrian ship drew closer, its sensors scanning the Defiant thoroughly. Inside the alien vessel, the commander felt nothing but contempt for the primitive craft he pursued. "This vessel still uses chemical thrusters for directional control," he reported to Sub-Commander Da. "Their main engines are nuclear fission-based, inefficient and dangerous. Capture if possible," came the reply. "Their technology may be primitive, but study of their engineering could be amusing." When the Valkyrian ship was just 5 kilometers behind, Captain Mu gave the order they had been waiting for: execute maneuver Hammerhead. Now, the Defiant suddenly cut its main engines and fired all lateral thrusters simultaneously. The ship spun 180 degrees in seconds, now facing directly toward the pursuing Valkyrian. Before the alien vessel could react to this unexpected move, Captain Mu gave her next command: open fire. The modified railguns on the Defiant's forward section activated simultaneously. Streams of tungsten projectiles accelerated to 15 kilometers per second erupted toward the Valkyrian ship. The dense metal rods, each no bigger than a human finger, carried enormous kinetic energy. The Valkyrian commander barely had time to activate shields designed to counter energy weapons. These shields, optimized to disperse plasma or laser attacks, provided almost no protection against physical objects moving at such velocities. The tungsten rods punched through the alien ship's outer hull like it was paper. Critical systems were shredded as the projectiles continued through the vessel and out the other side. Similar scenes played out across Earth orbit. The Valkyrian scouts, having separated to chase individual targets, suddenly found themselves under attack from ships they had dismissed as harmless. Aboard another scout ship, the alien commander watched in horror as 3 of his sister ships were crippled in seconds. "Impossible," he transmitted to the command ship. "How can these museum pieces damage our ships? Their weapons are primitive projectiles." High Commander Tay received the distress calls with disbelief. "Activate all defensive systems. Return fire immediately." But the humans had another surprise waiting. As the remaining Valkyrian scouts powered up their energy weapons, Captain Yu of the EDS Phoenix gave the order to deploy their secret weapon. EMP devices, deploy now. From the Phoenix's launch tubes came what looked like ordinary missiles. The Valkyrians targeted them with point defense systems, but instead of exploding when hit, the devices activated prematurely. Enormous electromagnetic pulses radiated outward, invisible but devastating to the Valkyrians' highly advanced electronics. Systems that relied on quantum computing and superconducting materials were particularly vulnerable. 2 more Valkyrian ships went completely dark, their lights extinguishing as their power systems crashed. A third spun out of control, its navigational systems scrambled by the pulse. On the Indomitable, the bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the tactical display showed 5 of the 7 Valkyrian scouts either destroyed or disabled. The remaining 2 were retreating at maximum speed. "It worked," Lieutenant Jin whispered, almost afraid to believe it. "Sir, it actually worked." Admiral Sun allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. But this is just the beginning. The real battle comes next. He turned to his communications officer. Send to all ships. Well done. Regroup at defensive positions. Prepare for main engagement. In his private command chamber aboard the Valkyrian flagship, High Commander Tai raged at his subordinates. His metallic skin had darkened to a deep blue, a sign of intense anger among his species. How were they able to penetrate our shields? Those were simple kinetic weapons, he demanded. The chief engineer ducked his head in submission. High Commander, our shields are optimized for energy weapons, plasma, laser, and particle beams. We never considered physical projectiles a threat. No advanced civilization uses such crude methods. And these pulses that disabled our systems. Electromagnetic pulses, sir. Again, primitive technology, but effective against our more sensitive components. We didn't shield against them because no advanced race would use something that would also damage their own systems. Ta paced the chamber, his forearms twitching with anger. They tricked us, made us think they were running, separated our forces, then struck when we were vulnerable. He stopped suddenly, his eyes narrowing. These humans are more dangerous than we thought. They use their primitive technology in ways we never considered. Turning to his second-in-command, Ta gave new orders. Prepare the main battle fleet. We will crush these humans with overwhelming force. No more underestimating them. Back on Earth, in the underground command center, Admiral Sun briefed the World Defense Council on their first victory. 5 enemy scouts destroyed or disabled, 2 retreating. No human casualties, he reported. Our modified weapons worked better than expected. Their shields offer almost no protection against kinetic projectiles. The council members looked stunned. Many had expected complete defeat within minutes of engagement. Will this strategy work against their main fleet? Asked the chairwoman. Admiral Sun's expression remained serious. No, they know our tricks now. They'll adapt their shields and tactics. The next battle will be much harder. Then why are you smiling, Admiral? Asked one of the council members. Because now, they know we can hurt them. Sun replied. And that means they'll be cautious. Cautious enemies make mistakes. As the council meeting concluded, Lieutenant Jin approached Admiral Sun with fresh intelligence. Sir, we've analyzed the debris from the destroyed scout ships. There's something interesting about their hull material. She handed him a tablet showing microscopic images of the alien metal. It's some kind of advanced alloy, but it has a crystalline structure. Our science team believes it might be particularly vulnerable to certain sonic frequencies. Admiral Sun studied the images. Can we exploit this? Possibly, Jin replied. We're modifying torpedoes now to emit the right frequency before impact. It might weaken their hulls just enough to increase damage. The Admiral nodded. Good work. Implement immediately. As Earth prepared for the next phase of battle, the remaining Valkyrian scouts rejoined their main fleet. High Commander Ta gathered his war council to plan their response to this unexpected setback. These humans are primitive but cunning, he told his officers. They use simple weapons in clever ways. We will not underestimate them again. He turned to his weapons master. Modify our shields to repel physical projectiles. Adjust our battle formation to prevent isolation of our vessels. Yes, High Commander, came the response. But this will reduce our shield's effectiveness against energy weapons. The humans have no energy weapons worth concerning ourselves with, Tai replied dismissively. Optimize for kinetic defense. As the Valkyrian fleet prepared for their main assault, they failed to notice the small maintenance ships deploying thousands of tiny objects in specific orbital patterns. Earth was setting the stage for the next phase of battle, and the Valkyrians were flying right into their trap. The Valkyrian main fleet arrived 3 days after the scout ship battle. 50 massive warships appeared from hyperspace, forming a perfect attack formation. Their hulls gleamed with a metallic blue-green shine that made them look like jewels against the blackness of space. At the center of the formation was High Commander Ta's flagship, twice the size of any other vessel and shaped like a curved blade. Admiral Sun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display as the enemy fleet approached Earth. His officers worked silently at their stations, each focused on their tasks. The calm before the storm. "They've modified their shields," reported Lieutenant Jin, studying sensor readings. "They're now configured to defend against kinetic weapons." Admiral Sun nodded. As expected, they learned quickly. A communication alert sounded, and High Commander Tay's face appeared on the main screen. His metallic skin had darkened to a deep blue, a sign of anger in his species. "You have postponed the inevitable." Tay's transmission boomed across all frequencies. "Now witness true power." Admiral Sun made no reply. Instead, he turned to his tactical officer. "Are all ships in position?" "Yes, sir. 37 vessels in defensive formation. All reporting ready." Sun took a deep breath. The next few hours would decide the fate of humanity. Begin Operation Thunderstorm. Across Earth's orbit, hundreds of modified satellites and orbital platforms that had been hidden within Earth's magnetosphere suddenly activated. Each began emitting electromagnetic pulses at specific frequencies. Individually, they were too weak to damage Valkyrian systems, but together, they created a web of disruptive fields. On the Valkyrian ships, targeting systems began showing ghost images. Sensor readings fluctuated wildly. Communication between vessels became broken and filled with static. "What is happening?" demanded High Commander Tay as his tactical display flickered. "Why can't we get clear targeting solutions?" His chief science officer worked frantically at his station. "The humans have saturated the orbital space with low-level interference. It's nothing our systems can't handle individually, but the combined effect is problematic." "Advance anyway," ordered Tay. "Their primitive tricks won't save them." The Valkyrian fleet moved forward, entering the outer defensive perimeter. Their formation remained tight despite the interference, a testament to their training and technology. When the aliens entered optimal range, Admiral Sun gave his next command. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Delta." Earth's vessels began moving in patterns that seemed random but were carefully planned. Ships accelerated and decelerated unpredictably. Some moved in tight spirals while others made sharp, sudden turns. To the Valkyrians, it looked like chaos, a disorganized panic response. Captain Mu on the Defiant led the first attack wing. Her ship swooped down from a high orbit, targeting a Valkyrian cruiser that had separated slightly from the main formation. "Launch kinetic harpoons," she ordered. From the Defiant's launch tubes came projectiles unlike anything used in previous human conflicts. Each harpoon was a 10-meter tungsten rod with a magnetic head and small maneuvering thrusters. They moved at tremendous speed, guided by simple targeting systems that were immune to the Valkyrians' electronic countermeasures. The first harpoon struck the Valkyrian ship's newly modified shields and pushed through. The shields had been adjusted to deflect kinetic weapons, but not ones moving at such velocity and with such mass. The harpoon punched through the ship's hull, its magnetic head attaching to internal structures. Then it detonated. The explosion ripped through the Valkyrian cruiser, causing secondary explosions as power systems overloaded. Within seconds, the once mighty vessel was reduced to a drifting hulk. "Harpoon strike successful," reported Captain Mu. "Target disabled." Similar attacks unfolded across the battlefield. Earth's ships darted in and out of the Valkyrian formation, launching their specialized weapons before retreating. The aliens returned fire with powerful energy beams that could slice through a human vessel in seconds, but only if they could hit them. "Their technology is too complex," shouted Lieutenant Jin over the comm as she analyzed incoming data. "Their systems are failing faster than they can adapt. Our simple targeting computers work better in this interference." Admiral Sun watched the battle unfold with intense focus. Earth was holding its own, but the sheer number of Valkyrian ships meant the advantage couldn't last. They needed to strike a decisive blow. "Launch Nuclear Package Alpha," he ordered. From Earth's surface, 15 missiles launched simultaneously, Each carried a modified nuclear warhead designed by Dr. Ju's team. The Valkyrians detected them immediately. Primitive nuclear weapons, scoffed High Commander Ta. Intercept and destroy. The aliens fired energy beams that destroyed 5 of the missiles. Point defense systems took out 7 more, but 3 got through, detonating in a triangular pattern around the Valkyrian fleet. The explosions themselves did little damage to the alien ships, but the electromagnetic pulses that followed were far more powerful than anything the Valkyrians had encountered before. Cascading waves of energy washed over their vessels, shorting out sensitive systems and overloading quantum circuits. Multiple ships reporting system failures called out Lieutenant Jin. Their formation is breaking. The perfect Valkyrian battle line began to disintegrate as ships lost power and control. Some drifted randomly. Others fired weapons at incorrect targets, sometimes hitting their own sister ships. High Commander Todd watched in growing horror as his fleet fell into disarray. His flagship, the massive Dominion's Will, remained operational thanks to extra shielding, but many of his vessels were effectively blind. "Target the human command ship," he ordered, his voice cold with rage. "All functional weapons. Fire." The Dominion's Will turned its massive energy cannons toward the Indomitable. Beams of blue-white energy lashed out, striking the Earth vessel's armor. Metal glowed red, then white-hot as the beams cut deeper. On the Indomitable's bridge, systems sparked and emergency alarms blared. The deck shook violently under Admiral Sun's feet. "Outer hull breach on decks 5 through 8, reported the damage control officer. "Armor failing." Admiral Sun gripped the command rail tightly. This was the moment he had been waiting for. "All ships, focus fire on the Valkyrian flagship. Execute maneuver Hammer of Thor." Across the battlefield, Earth's remaining vessels broke off their individual engagements and turned toward the Dominion's Will. Even as the massive alien ship continued its assault on the Indomitable, it suddenly found itself targeted by 26 human vessels simultaneously. "Return fire," ordered Admiral Sun calmly as another energy beam struck his ship. All batteries. The Indomitable's full arsenal discharged at once. Railguns firing tungsten rods, missiles launching in waves, and a prototype weapon Dr. Ju had called the gravitational hammer. This last device created a focused gravity well that distorted space briefly around its target, placing enormous stress on physical structures. The combined assault overwhelmed the flagship's defenses. Explosions bloomed across its elegant hull as kinetic projectiles found weak spots. Internal detonations sent plumes of atmosphere venting into space. On the Valkyrian bridge, High Commander Tai was thrown from his command platform as the ship bucked beneath him. "How is this possible?" he demanded, purple blood leaking from a cut on his face. "They're using primitive weapons." "Their weapons may be primitive," replied his second-in-command, "but their tactics are not. They've studied our weaknesses and exploited them perfectly." Another hit rocked the flagship. Power flickered across the bridge. "Main power at 40%, reported an officer. "We've lost weapons control on the port side. Engines are failing." Tai stared at the tactical display, watching as his once mighty fleet was being systematically disabled by vessels he had dismissed as museum pieces. The humans were fighting with a ferocity and cleverness he had never encountered before. "All ships," he transmitted to his remaining functioning vessels, "concentrate fire on the human flagship. Destroy it at all costs." 5 Valkyrian cruisers turned their weapons toward the Indomitable, which was already severely damaged from the flagship's assault. Energy beams converged on the human vessel, cutting through what remained of its armor. Admiral Sun felt the ship dying around him. Smoke filled the bridge, and several officers lay wounded at their stations. But he wasn't finished yet. "Deploy final countermeasure," he ordered Lieutenant Jin, who was bleeding from a head wound, but still at her post. Jin activated a small device that had been installed beneath her console. It sent a coded signal to thousands of small objects that had been placed in specific orbital paths days earlier. Across the battlefield, these objects, simple metal spheres containing powerful explosives, detonated simultaneously. The blasts weren't powerful enough to damage the alien ships directly, but the resulting debris cloud, moving at orbital velocities, created a hailstorm of tiny projectiles. The Valkyrian vessels, their shields weakened by previous attacks, suddenly found themselves being peppered by thousands of metal fragments moving at tremendous speeds. The impacts weren't individually fatal, but they compounded the damage already inflicted. The tide of battle had turned definitively. The once proud Valkyrian fleet was now fighting for survival. High Commander Ta stood on the burning bridge of the Dominion's will. Smoke filled the air as control panels sparked and exploded around him. The ship shuddered as another salvo of Earth weapons found their mark. His chief officers lay dead or wounded at their stations. "This cannot be," Ta said, clutching a wound on his upper arm. "They are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours." The tactical officer, his metallic skin dulled with exhaustion, looked up from his damaged console. "High Commander, we've lost 17 ships completely. 22 more are disabled and unable to fight. The remaining vessels are retreating to a defensive position." Ta stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The once perfect formation of the Valkyrian fleet was now a scattered mess of damaged and drifting ships. The human vessels, though fewer in number and less advanced, had systematically torn his fleet apart. A communication alert sounded, and Admiral Sun's face appeared on the cracked main screen. The human commander looked tired but determined, his uniform burned and torn from the battle. "This is Earth." Sun's voice came through on all Valkyrian frequencies. "We don't wish to destroy you, but we will defend our home. Your technological superiority means nothing against our will to survive. Stand down your weapons, and we can discuss terms." Tay's first instinct was to refuse, to fight to the death as a proper Valkyrian warrior. But looking around at his ruined flagship, at the broken remains of his fleet, he knew that continued battle would only lead to more death, with no chance of victory. "Signal our remaining ships," he ordered quietly. "Stand down weapons. The battle is over." 3 days later, High Commander Ta stood before the United Nations Security Council in Geneva. His once proud posture was now humble. He wore no armor, only a simple diplomatic robe in the colors of his house. 4 human guards stood nearby, watching his every move. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth. Many still looked at him with fear and anger, but others showed curiosity. At the center table sat Admiral Sun and the key leaders who had organized Earth's defense. Ta stepped forward when asked to speak. His translator device converted his words to human languages. "The Valkyrian Dominion acknowledges Earth as a sovereign power," he stated formally. "We request an exchange of knowledge and peaceful relations. My people have never—" He paused, the words difficult for him. "We have never been defeated in battle before. You have earned the right to be treated as equals." A document was brought forward, a treaty written in both human languages and Valkyrian script. It established peace between Earth and the Dominion, promised the withdrawal of all Valkyrian military forces, and outlined terms for future diplomatic relations. Admiral Sun, still wearing his battle-scorched uniform, signed the treaty on behalf of Earth. Ta signed for the Valkyrian Dominion. The chamber erupted in applause and cheers. 1 week later, as Earth began the process of recovery, a memorial garden was hastily constructed in Geneva to honor those lost in the battle. 517 humans had died defending their planet. Each name was engraved on a wall of black stone. Admiral Sun walked among the memorials, stopping to read names of people who had served under his command. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see High Commander Tay approaching, alone and unarmed. The 2 leaders stood side by side, looking at the memorial wall. "How did you defeat us?" Tai asked quietly. "Our technology." "Technology isn't everything," Sun replied. "Humanity learned to fight with sticks and stones before we built computers. We never forgot those lessons. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective." Ta nodded slowly. The Dominion has much to learn from Earth, it seems. We have relied on our advanced technology for so long that we forgot the basics of warfare: adaptability, creativity, using the environment to your advantage. Those who face hardship often develop strengths that those with easy lives never need. Sun said. They walked together through the garden, two former enemies finding a strange respect for one another. My government has authorized me to share some of our technology with your people, Ta said. Not weapons, but medical advances, clean energy systems, faster than light communications. We would appreciate that, replied Sun. And in return, perhaps we can teach your military strategists a thing or two about thinking outside the box. Tai made a sound that might have been a laugh. I believe several of my surviving officers are already requesting such training. As the weeks passed, the remaining Valkyrian ships departed Earth orbit, leaving behind only a small diplomatic vessel. Repair crews worked to salvage what they could from the damaged or destroyed alien craft. Each piece of recovered technology was a treasure trove of advanced science. News of Earth's victory spread across the galaxy. The Valkyrian Dominion had been a feared power, conquering 12 systems without a single defeat. Now, other civilizations took notice of the small blue planet that had repelled the invaders with relatively primitive technology. 6 diplomatic missions from other alien species arrived within 2 months, each eager to establish relations with the humans who had accomplished the impossible. In his office overlooking the United Nations Plaza, Admiral Sun reviewed the plans for Earth's new fleet. The designs incorporated Valkyrian technology: better engines, stronger hull materials, more efficient power systems, while maintaining the human approaches to weapons and tactics that had proven so effective. We've learned an important lesson, he told his gathered officers. Advanced technology is valuable, but understanding how to use what you have is more important than having the newest, shiniest tools. Lieutenant Jin, now promoted to commander for her role in the battle, nodded in agreement. The Valkyrians had better ships, but we had better tactics. We've earned our place among the stars. Sun continued, looking at the designs for Earth's first true interstellar vessel. Not because we had the best technology, but because we never forgot how to fight with what we had. As he spoke, a new Valkyrian diplomatic ship entered Earth orbit, bringing scientific and cultural delegates to begin the exchange of knowledge between the two civilizations. On its hull, alongside the symbols of the Dominion, was a new marking, a sign of respect for the humans who had taught them humility. High Commander Tai, now appointed as permanent ambassador to Earth, stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking down at the blue planet that had changed everything for his people. They fight like warriors of old, he told his aide, with courage, cleverness, and a willingness to die for their world. Those are qualities the Dominion had forgotten in our pursuit of technological perfection. On Earth, children played with new toys, model spaceships of both human and Valkyrian design. In their games, the humans always won, but now it wasn't through destruction, but through clever tricks that forced the aliens to surrender and become friends. A year after the battle, on the anniversary of victory, Admiral Sun and Ambassador Ta unveiled a new monument in orbit, a sculpture made from pieces of both human and Valkyrian ships fused together into a symbol of peace. Today we remember a battle, Sun said during the ceremony, but we celebrate what came after, the beginning of humanity's journey to the stars, not as conquerors or the conquered, but as equals among the galactic community. Tai added his own words. And we of the Dominion remember that true strength comes not from technology alone, but from the spirit within. The humans taught us this lesson well. As the solar system filled with ships from a dozen worlds, Earth prepared for its new role in galactic affairs. The planet that had been dismissed as primitive was now recognized across the stars by a new title: the world that could not be conquered. The end.